Hey guys, so today we're going to be making a 2D game in Unreal Engine. To be able to accomplish this, we're going to need a couple of plugins that we're going to have to enable and install and download. Not necessarily in that order. Um, and we are going to do like a traditional, very classic retro top-down pixel art style 2D game. Now, um, I just want to say that like pixel art today is more of a style choice, whereas like there was a time where this was the only way that there could be any kind of graphics, especially in like the Atari and 8-bit and 16-bit eras. Okay, so allow me to show you guys approximately what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to use Photoshop here to kind of draw out the plan for you guys. So as I already pointed out, we're going to have a hero. Okay. And they'll have melee, and they'll have a ranged attack. Okay. We're going to have some enemies, and they're going to have like just different behaviors. Okay. This will all be in pixel art style. Top down. It's going to be gated gameplay. Okay. So this is the short list of what we need to make for this project. Okay. There's some finer points to this and subsections that are going to go along with this entire project. And it's all in an attempt to demonstrate as many Unreal Engine features and things that we can do. So first thing we're going to do is create our first like opening level scene. Okay, so our first little stage here. Okay, so our hero will essentially start and spawn in here, and we're gonna do this entire thing in pixel art. Okay, so the character and the scene around him. You guys are welcome to, once we get to the point where I show you how to um, work with tile maps, you can design this out to be. But honestly, it doesn't need to be any more than just like a grass plus tree type area. Like grass in the middle, trees all around. But what we are going to need is access to these areas outside the map here. So again, you can go any direction you want. We can go all four if you like. It's fine. Okay. Um, so what I want to happen here is I basically want players to enter in a new area from this way. Okay. And we want them to discover that this area is, well, let's just say it, it's deadly. Okay. So when the player enters this area, they will instantly start to like lose health. Okay. Um, you could accomplish this just like you could just call this like poison or like poison fog. You could just be like make it a lava area and maybe it's just hot. Or maybe it's too cold. Whatever reason you want to put behind it, I'm fine with it. essentially the process will be the same for all of them. The bottom line here is that we want players to realize that like we can't go this way yet, right? So that will cause them to force them to kind of sort of go other directions, creating that gated gameplay. So if the player finds themselves over here, right? Let's say they go this way, and instead, um, let's have this door slam shut behind them, trapping them in here, where then we will start to spawn in waves of enemies, different enemy types, where the player will now have to fight off these enemies. Okay, so if they can defeat all of the enemies, they get a prize. Okay, that prize will be, you know, to be gas mask, or could be, I don't know, cooling wand, or parka. Okay, could be any of these type of prizes. You already see where I'm going with this. So the player will go over here. They will defeat waves of enemies, different enemy types with different behaviors. We don't just want to do a straight pixel swap. We are going to use different structures to create different enemies with different combat patterns, such as like some that are only weak to melee attacks, some that are only weak to ranged attacks. So again, the hero is going to have both melee and ranged. But upon winning, they'll get some item that will allow them to then go back this way, safely traverse this zone, which will bring them to, for the sake of argument, oops, the boss room. Okay. And then the whole project is going to end with creating a multi-stage boss fight. Okay, so for anyone who isn't familiar with this kind of gameplay, you'll see very quickly the player will start here, down below. We can do some other like little levels here if you like as well. Like it's fine. They can just be for exploration, added collectibles or whatnot. You can even have some enemies in those zones for fighting and grinding. Because we're gonna have a respawn timer as well, so the enemies can respawn. The players can go and fight and grind and earn loot like gold in order to buy things, which will bring us to at some point we will also be making a shop, which will pretty much just provide potions. We're not going to get crazy with this. Our goal here is to demonstrate using enumerators and structures for the hero abilities and the different enemy styles, and gated gameplay. So the idea of can't go this way, so we'll go this way, we'll earn the prize so that now that we can go and traverse this zone to get us to the boss room where we will make a multi-stage boss fight. Okay, so that will be a lot of work. We're going to have to accomplish all of this in 80 hours. So, Dad, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. Okay, guys. So you can see right here, I've got my Unreal Engine client open, so we're just going to head over to the library. We're just going to head over to the library here, and we're going to go ahead and launch a fresh, brand new Unreal Engine 5.7 project. So we're going to click on New Project, and here we've got all of our templates and different options. We're actually going to start with a blank project this time. We're going to make sure that we're set on to Blueprint, because only civilized people use Blueprint these days. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that you keep track of where you're saving your project, and we're going to name our project. So I'm going to call this by my first name. I'm going to say 2D project. Okay. I'm just going to leave everything else default. So I'll hit create. All right, so here we are inside of Unreal Engine. I would hope that by now there's nothing new under the sun here to look at. So with that, let's just get started. First thing I'm going to do is we're just going to start by making a whole. We're just going to go to File, a new level. We're going to choose a full, just empty level. Okay. So here we are inside of our full empty level. Yeah, we're going to go to File. We're going to save our current level as. Okay, so in our content folder, we're going to go ahead and make a new folder, and we're going to call this maps or levels or stages, whatever you want to call them, it's fine. Okay. And then inside of here, we're going to call our new level main level, main stage, main area, whatever you want, but it's going to be our primary location. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so now if we go to Control Space and check out our content browser, we've got a brand new folder here with our map inside. Okay, and now that we have our new map, which is just an empty black void, we need to create a game mode. So we're going to right click in here, make a new folder, and we'll call this Blueprint. We'll go inside this folder, we'll right click, create a Blueprint class. We're going to choose Game Mode Base. Okay. So we're going to do, obviously, just keeping with our naming conventions, we're going to do GM for game mode, so GM underscore. And we can just call this like top down. Okay, so that's it, just that simple. Okay, so now we've got our main map, our first map, and our game mode. So let's make these our default mode and map. We're going to go to Edit and Project Settings. I'm just going to dock my project settings here, and we're going to go into Maps and Modes. Inside of Maps and Modes, you're going to see here we got a default game mode, we got an editor startup map, and we have a game default map. So we'll go ahead and we'll take our game mode, and we're going to grab our GM top-down game mode. And then our editor startup map is the map that will be open when we start our engine. So every day when we come to work, this will be the map that opens when we launch the engine, rather than opening up in that giant open world that we started with. We are going to go ahead and grab our main level. Okay. And then, of course, our game default map. So this is the map that loads when we hit play. Right? So we're going to start with that main level as well. Okay, there's no confirmation needed. Once it's set, the game mode is ready to go. Leave the project settings open for now. Okay, because we got a lot of stuff to do in here. So Unreal Engine is a 3D engine. So inside of a game engine, any good game engine, technically speaking, there's nothing you can't do. There really isn't too much you can't accomplish. The question always just comes down to the how. And that's not any different here with Unreal Engine. It's primarily built from the ground up with like heavy duty 3D application in mind. Does this mean it can't do 2D? No, it doesn't. It just means that we have to do a lot of like setup and a little bit of extra work to get this going. So thanks to someone by the name of Code Cobra, I got these settings from them, and they work really good and they keep things kind of simple for us. But there is a huge list of settings to go through here, so get ready to pause quite a bit for the next little bit as you find and set these settings. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is, because we are going to be working in 2D, we're going to want to set up like a pixel limit, right? So we're going to have to search here for pixel. Okay. And then down here, you'll see the new asset settings. We're going to see default pixels per Unreal unit. So Unreal Engine operates in specific units to Unreal Engine. And we're going to change that default Unreal Engine unit from 1 to 0.25. Okay. Again, there's no accept or agree or okay or save. Once it's set, it's set. And now we can get into the rest of our 2D settings. So now we're going to go ahead and search for our render settings. Sorry, we're going to be adjusting our render settings, and the first one of those we're going to adjust is going to be the auto exposure. So auto exposure, we are going to set the auto exposure histogram to manual, and the auto exposure number of 1 we're going to be setting to the bias to 0. Okay, a lot of these settings are going to be just set to 0, but follow along and pay attention because not all of them are. Okay, so now that we've got that auto exposure, we're going to go to motion blur. We're going to uncheck motion blur. We're going to look for the anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing method, we are going to put it to none. Okay, we need the global illumination. The dynamic global illumination method, we're going to switch from lumen to none. Reflections. Down here, reflections, we got the reflection method. We're going to switch from lumen to none. The shadow map. Shadow map method, we're going to switch from virtual shadow maps to just shadow maps. Ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion, we're going to turn both of these settings, the ambient occlusion and the ambient occlusion static fraction, off. All ambient occlusion turned off. We're going to search for the forward shading. Forward shading, we're going to enable forward shading. This is going to trigger a Unreal Engine restart. Don't restart it just yet. Okay? Just click on restart later. On my screen share, you didn't see it pop up, but it did. Okay? So that should be good enough for our project settings for now. You can close it if you wish. You can leave it up there. It's fine. Okay, so now let's go back to our main level in our viewport here. And we're going to add a post-processing volume. So I'm just going to go up here to the quick add, and I'm just going to search for post-process. Oops, sorry, I went to the wrong thing. We're going to go to post-process. And we're just going to choose a post-processing volume. Doesn't matter which one you grab here. They'll all do the trick. Okay, I'm just going to click and add a post-processing volume to my scene. First thing I'm going to do is in my transform. This is so important, especially with the 2D game design stuff. Make sure when you're with an 2D game design stuff and an empty project, make sure you're aware of where everything is. Okay, do not just let things exist where they want to. So you'll notice this post-processing volume, for example, spawned in at 320 on the X and 80 on the Z and 0 on the Y. It's like, no, let's put this thing at 0. So you can type all zeros in here, or you can just click this little arrow here, which will reset the post-processing volume to a 0 position. Okay. Now we're going to have to make some adjustments inside of this post-processing volume. First of which we are going to search for the EV100 under exposure. We're going to turn both of these on. Okay, and we're going to set them both to 0. Then we're going to search for the extent. And you'll see here it says infinite extent unbound. So we're going to check that on. So that's just going to mean that this post-processing volume is going to infect the entire error space without having to actually adjust the size of it. Okay. Now we need to search for vignette. And we're going to turn on the vignette size. Sorry, the vignette intensity. Forgive me. We're going to turn on the vignette intensity. And we're going to set this to 0. Okay, now we're going to search for the gamut. We're going to turn the gamut on, set that to 0. We now need to search for the tone curve. We're going to set the tone curve, turn that on to 0. Now we can go ahead and save and restart our Unreal Engine. I'm just going to save all and close Unreal Engine. We're not going to restart Unreal Engine right away. Instead, we are going to first go to, you can go through the internet or you could go through the Unreal client, but we're just going to go to the Fab Marketplace. Okay. Just inside the Fab Marketplace here is where we're going to find the plugin that we need. Okay. So Paper 2D is part of Unreal Engine already, and it's just a plugin we'll have to enable. But before we go start enabling all these plugins, we need another plugin called Paper ZD. Spell it as one word, Paper ZD. You'll get exactly what it is you're looking for. It's this Paper ZD here. Another way you can do it is just go into Unreal Engine specifically, sort by tools and plugins, and then you'll really just get what you're looking for. Okay, so Paper ZD is an independently created plugin. It helps with setting up and organizing our sprites with using flipbooks and things of that sort. Again, you'll see all that shortly. So I've already got this added to my project and installed to my Unreal Engine. So you guys will have something here where it'll be like add to my library or whatnot. So go ahead and make sure you're logged in. And if you went through your client, you'll already be logged in. And just add this to your library. Okay. Which then when we get back to the engine here, you should be able to find Paper ZD here in your library section of Unreal. Okay. And it'll here you'll have an option to install to engine. You can choose the engine version you want to install to. I already have it installed to engine 5.7, so I don't need to install it. Click here, install to engine. Okay. Then we can go back into our project and relaunch our project. So it was just into the project. Here we are back inside of our project with the new plugin downloaded and installed to the engine. Okay. If you were curious, in case if you're wondering if like the installation worked, you could always go here and click on the installed plugins, and you'll see here all of the plugins that are installed. So now I know I've got it properly. But you'll also know if you've got it in there or not, because we have to enable the plugin still. So we're going to have to go to Edit and go to Plugins right underneath the project settings. Okay. And we're just going to search for Paper. So by searching for Paper, we're going to see both the Paper 2D and the Paper ZD plugins. Now for me, the Paper 2D was already enabled, so just make sure yours is also enabled. And for Paper ZD, I'm just going to go ahead and enable that. And it's going to ask you to restart the engine, so we can go ahead and restart that now. So with that, we should be all set, but everything should be good to go for actually starting to build our project. So now let's start exploring just a little bit about paper ZD, paper 2D, and enumerators and structures. Okay, so first let's get some assets imported. So those of you who are close to me, you already should have access to the pixel art we're going to be using. If you're watching this from outside of my classroom, you'll have to source some kind of pixel art for your project, as I'm not going to be providing it. So the character we're going to be using has a full 8 directions. That includes a walk and an idle animation, includes a melee attack animation, it also includes a ranged attack. Sounds like a lot, but actually really wouldn't be all that hard to source and purchase, or even probably find something. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is go into our content drawer, which when we get into here as well, we can go into our content. If we right click, you'll see here we got paper 2D and paper ZD as options now when we right click. Just another way to know that the plugins are properly enabled. Okay. So inside of our content, we're going to right click and we are going to make a new folder. Okay. And we're going to call this paper assets. All right, and inside of there, I'm going to make another folder. And I'm going to call this character. Okay. And inside of the character folder now, I'm going to go into my folder where I keep my pixel art asset. So here's my pixel art assets inside my folder here. And you'll probably be encountered with a couple of different variations of this. Here's the actual sprite sheet here. So I can open this up and then you can see here that we've got this entire sprite sheet with all of our different poses, right? So we got like just standing, facing, different attack animations, both melee, and we've got bow and arrow attacks. We have some hit frames here, the white frames that you see. We got like a death animation. But right now it just looks like just a weird scene of all the different poses of our character. And it's very much just like old style animation where we just string all of these together, and when they are played into a certain in a certain order at a certain speed, the character appears to be moving. Okay, but that's not the piece we're actually going to need. We're going to need this other piece here, which is a JSON file. Okay, or a JSON, right? So we just say JSON. Okay, so with that JSON file, I'm just going to drag and drop the JSON file right into my paper assets folder. And by doing so, we'll automatically get 3 things created here. We get the sprite sheet, we get the textures, and we get the frames. And I'm going to go back to the paper assets. I'm going to make a whole new folder, and we're going to call this environment. All right, so I'm just going to drag and drop my environment asset into my environment folder, and there it is. These assets now brought in. We got some environment stuff, we got some character stuff. We need to fix the texture settings. So in the content browser, we can go ahead and just use a filter here. So we can go ahead and search for textures. Okay, and we'll see we got the dungeon texture and the tough guy hero texture. We're going to select all the textures. So I just hold shift and select all of them. And we're going to right click. We're going to go to sprite actions and apply paper 2D texture settings. Now with the texture still selected, I'm going to right click. We're going to go to asset actions. And we are going to select edit selection in property matrix. okay, which is going to open up this other window for us. We can close project. We're going to select all of these, so we can do just Control A to select them all. Okay, and then in here we're going to search for filter, and we're going to set all of them to nearest, and then save. Okay, so again, this is just demonstrating all the different little setups you need to do to make Unreal Engine work well with pixel art or 2D games. But I promise you that once we get on the other side of all of this setup and tinkering, it becomes really fun and fairly easy to do. Okay, so with that little setting accomplished, I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to go ahead and save. Okay, so now we need to create a flipbook. Okay, so the flipbook works exactly how it sounds. If you guys remember, maybe at some point in your elementary school days, you might have had to draw like a little stick figure on many, many pages, and then when you flip the pages really fast, you can make the character look like they were jumping or running or doing all kinds of fun little actions. So we need to create a flipbook for our character as well. So we're going to go into our character folder here. Okay. We're going to go into our frames. We're going to select all of these sprites. So just select the first one, and then I scroll down and hit while holding shift, select the last one. We're going to right click and create a flipbook. Okay. And when we do that, you'll see now we've got all these new paper flipbooks. We still have all the old sprites, but now we got these paper flipbooks here, which has assembled all of our artwork together to create the little animations with the flipbooks in all the different directions. Sword attacks facing all different directions, the different bow attacks in all different directions. We got this tough guy dies just in all the different directions. We got the tough guy gets hit all different directions again. Okay. But you may be noticing that, this attack might be looking a little bit on the quick side. So we can adjust this. The first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our filter. We're just going to filter out flipbooks, paper flipbook. Now we just get the flipbooks, just the animations are showing now. We don't get the sprites anymore. Okay, and then once again, we're going to select them all. So I'll select the first one, I'll hold shift, and I'll select the last one, which will select all. We're going to right click, asset actions. And then edit selection in property matrix. Okay. This edit selection and property matrix things just allows us to change the setting of multiple things at once. We could have technically just like changed it all right there, each one separately in the details panel, or maybe not in the details panel, but by opening it, and then we could adjust the frames per second for each one of these by themselves. But that would take a long time, right? But by selecting the first one, the last one, right click, and asset actions, edit selection property matrix, sounds all scary, but all it's saying is I want you to change the setting of all of these assets at the exact same time to the exact same setting, right? So then we can just Control A to select all. Okay. And then in the sprite section, we got frames per second. We're going to change from 15 to 7, essentially cutting it in half. Okay. Now if I close this, we go back in here, you can see now the attacks have slowed down a fair amount. Okay. A little bit more reasonable, which they play. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save again. All right. We're getting there. So now let's create a tile set. So a tile set is going to be kind of like, if you could imagine in say Photoshop or Illustrator, whatever drawing program you like to use, you have like a palette of colors Imagine if that palette of colors was instead like a palette of 2D assets. Okay, so with that, we're going to create a tile set that we can use, that we can basically, just like we would by changing color of our paintbrush, so we can paint a thing. We're just going to have a tile set that we can select on, so we can paint out a fun little map. Okay, so to create a tile set, we're going to first clear our filter here. We're going to go back to our paper assets section and go into our environment. Now I'm going to right click on this and we're going to go to sprite actions and create a tile set. And I'm going to open up this tile set. And inside of here, I'll be able to add collision. Okay. So it can be a little tricky to decipher like how these work and how you're going to use them. But for now, just know that anywhere there's floor or like will be area that our player can like essentially walk on, will be no collision. Okay, we're going to do our own special collider for that. Okay, but you may want collision for, say, the walls, right? So, you know, you can grab any of these sections here. So this edge here is like a cliff edge. You don't want the player to be able to walk off the cliff edge. We can add a box. Okay, and if we want this cliff edge, we can add another box. Okay, so we can just keep going across this and add colliders. Now, don't worry, later on, we're going to be able to adjust how close the player can get to these colliders, so don't sweat that. Now that we have this, we are going to right click and create a tile map. Okay, and I'll double click to open up the tile map. And inside of here, what you're going to see is we got this canvas, this artboard, and then we have our palette over here that we can draw and paint our map with. Okay, so we've got, you know, essentially a paint so that we can just grab any old thing like the stars and we can just start painting stars in if we like. We've got an eraser so we can erase those, and then we got a fill button, okay, where we can just grab some grass and fill grass. Okay. Now that we've got some grass filled in here, though, we're going to have to adjust this artboard a little bit. So we're going to go with our map width of 8. We're going to do a map height of 5. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill this with the green grass for now. You know, if you want to, you could go ahead, I guess, and you could like paint like a cliff here if you like. You could even remove that and start playing with adding hills. This would be like a cliff edge that the player can't really reverse. There's collision on there. Now with this green grass is fairly repetitive and whatnot. We want a little bit of features and movements. So like there's a, you can see here, there's this grass with some type of flowers attached to it. We could even add like a little bit of desert space. I'm not getting crazy deep into the detail with it here at the moment, but you guys get the idea. Okay. With that, I'll just save the tile map and we'll go back to our level, and now we can add our tile map straight to our stage. Okay. Now I'm not seeing anything, so you guys may have this problem. We'll adjust that in a second. First thing I want to do is return this thing to a 0 position. And then on the on the x-axis, rotation, we're going to rotate this to 270. Because we're going to do top down, so we're actually going to have this thing facing, so we're looking at it from the top down. Okay. Now, if you're not seeing your pixel art right now, that's not tragic. There's a couple of things that could be going on. First of all, if you go to your lit and just switch to unlit, you'll probably see it. Okay. But we want it to be lit. So one possibility here is just in the materials here, you may need to try some of these other materials. You'll notice some of them are called opaque unlit, translucent lit. You can play around with some of those. Or it could just be that in perspective here, we've got game settings. Okay, I'm just going to turn these game settings off, and now I'm going to. Okay. All right, now we need some collision for our player to walk on this cleanly and safely. Okay, so for that, what we're going to do is we're just going to add a simple plane with collision. Okay, so we're just going to go to our quick add, and we're just going to search for plane. We're going to add a plane. Okay, I'm going to go to my scale, which is R on my keyboard. I'm going to scale this up, and we're going to set this thing to 0 position as well. And we'll move this into position, and I'm going to make sure that it's larger than my play area. It doesn't matter if it's like way oversized. Okay. Now this floor collision already has, sorry, this floor plane already has collision. Okay, but you'll notice you got all this Z fighting here, right? So it's fighting for render space on the exact same level as our tile map. Well, that's not a problem. With your plane selected, we're going to just search for visibility. And under visibility, we're just going to check that box off. Okay, so the plane is still there. And it's still applying collision for us. It's just invisible. Okay, so now our player will be able to walk around on top of that. Create our player. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to go here and search for a player start. We're just going to add a player start. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and the player start here. I'm going to reset that to 0. You know, you can start them anywhere you want, but you see how it says bad size. I'm just going to raise this above until it no longer says bad size. And I'm going to press the end key on my keyboard, which will drop it right down onto the first collider. And I'm going to rotate this around because that little blue arrow there shows the direction the player will be facing when the game starts. So I'm just going to start them facing. Okay, guys. The last couple steps we're going to do real quick is just a quick introduction to enumerator and structure. So first, we're going to set up an enumerator. Okay, so an enumerator is just a list of named choices. So instead of typing text manually, Unreal Engine will let us choose from a clean list of options, and this helps reduce mistakes and keeps gameplay logic organized. All right, so we're just going to go into our content drawer here. We're going to go into our content drawer here, and in our blueprints folder, we'll go ahead and we'll make a new folder. We'll just call this like Enums. Okay, and then right inside of our folder, we're going to right click. We're going to go to blueprint. We're going to, right here, you'll see enumeration and structure. Okay, so we're going to click on enumeration. We'll call this E underscore for enumerator. And we'll call this player ability. Okay. And then we're just going to open this up. Double click, we'll open it up. So it's really simple. You'll see here that inside we have a thing we can add an enumerator. And then there's an enumerator description. So we can just type in here that this is the player ability. Oops. Okay, and I'm going to add an enumerator. Okay, and then when I add an enumerator, we'll see we got a display name of the new enumerator 0 and a description. So this is useful for like if we want to organize things in Unreal Engine and create different reactions to different options. I mean, that's the use case we're going to use it for. Again, you're really only limited by your imagination. So allow me to expand on what I mean. So first, we'll just create one that says none. All right, Cool. That's it. It's just not. It's nothing. We're gonna add another one. Now this might start to come a little clearer for you. We're gonna add one that's called sword attack. Okay. And then we're gonna add another one. We're gonna call this bow. Okay. So now that we have these, we'll be able to distinguish between the difference between a bow attack, a sword attack, or no attack at all. So if we want a character to, let's say, be only weak to bow attacks and have invincibility to sword attacks. So now, with our enumerator set up in our blueprint later, we'll be able to check with a branch for true or false, whether it's a bow attack or a sword attack, and then we can calculate damage for the enemy. Right? So if the enemy is immune to bow attacks, then we can set up a branch that says, if the bow attack is true, do nothing, and if it's false, do this. Right? Or I guess better yet, if it's a sword attack, true, calculate damage, and if it's not a sword attack or false, do nothing. Right? Maybe even have it say, like, maybe there's an enemy that gains speed or gains health from a bow attack. Well, how would we do that? Okay, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So now we've got a list of enumerators. Let's go ahead and save that. And we'll go back here, and in our blueprints folder, we'll create a new folder, and we'll call this Struct, or just short for structure. Okay, so inside of here, we'll right click and we'll go to blueprint. We'll create a structure. We'll call this the S underscore. What are we going to call this one again? Right, character data. Okay. So this will be a list of all the different stats that our characters can have in the game. What characters? All of them, right? So the hero, the enemies, the boss, they're all going to be using these stats, right? So what kind of stats are they all going to share in common? Well, let's open this up first and have a look. So we got this. It's very similar to the enumerator, right? So we got to add a variable, but a structure lets us do is save an entire list of variables in advance that we can then call in our blueprints later as like a standard form of a variable. We don't have to recreate these variables with every single character we create. So, for example, a very obvious one that they're all going to be sharing is health, right? And that's going to be a float. And so now we have health added to this structure that we can call later, and all the characters will have health variables. Right? So we don't have to create a health variable for every single enemy character that we create. Right? So now, as I was saying before, if we had a character that said, say, was hit by a bow attack, that they don't take damage, instead they're healed, we can then say, well, if it's false, or rather if the bow attack is true, or if it's not a sword attack, then we can access health and heal them. Right? So what other things might our characters share in common? Well, we can add another variable. Okay. Another thing they're all going to have is max health. Okay. And that's also going to be a float. Okay. Another one they're going to share will be their move speed. They're all going to have move speed. They're all going to need a number that represents their movement speed. What is their movement speed? Well, we can adjust that. Everyone will move slower, faster. Maybe there's going to be different status conditions that will change move speed. Maybe they get slowed for some reason, or stunned maybe. Then we're going to remove move speed entirely. But they are going to all use a move speed. Right? So we've got a max, we got health, max health, move speed. Okay. We're also going to need to know if a character is alive. Okay, and that's going to be a Boolean. And we may even need to know if they're stunned, which will also be, right? So a structure is just a massive list of variables that we can put together that we can call quickly inside of other blueprints later. instead of recreating a health variable 100 times because we've got health on our main character. Maybe there's NPCs that'll have health, and of course, all the different enemy types that we're gonna have are gonna have health, right? So in the case of like just generic minions who might have 1, 2, or 5 health, but our boss who might have 100 health, well, we don't need to create new variables for that health. And then of course with our enumerator, we've got a list of names that we can call on for different data or for different damage types or player abilities. Okay, which then we can call these in our blueprints for, like, let's say we're going to be doing a multi-stage boss battle, right? Which means our boss is going to perhaps take range damage early on in the battle, but at some point when he reaches maybe 50% health, he'll change his movement and attack patterns, and now he'll only be weak to other attack types. So we can change these different combat states on our boss just by using this simple enumerator list, by saying, hey, if this is a ranged attack now, don't take any damage. Or even maybe speed them up. Okay? So those are enumerators and data structures. We will definitely be using this and getting into it a lot more later. Okay, so that's your project set up. Now I would just say, until the next video, until you're ready for the next video, just go and play with your tile map and set something up nice to start your project off with. In the next video, we will set up the player and the player controller. All right, stay frosty.